I want to first thank God for the opportunity to be part of the Marriage Covenant Conference. I want to thank Dr. and Mrs. Misigalo for making it possible and to feel that I am the person who can be one of the presenters. I'm very grateful. I feel honored. And with a lot of respect, I want to say thank you. And I also want to thank my wife for being part of the whole of this teaching. We have been preparing together, praying together, and you were in our heart when we were thinking and preparing this subject. And she gave me the responsibility of presenting it to you. We were supposed to present it together, but with time we have learned that it doesn't work because I take all the time and I suffocate her. So this time she said, Lucas, you go ahead and do the presentation. And I'm grateful for that. I'm really thankful to God. Thank you for you to take time to be part of this conference. I believe that you're going to learn a lot, and I believe that God has something very specific for you and your spouse in store that you're going to learn this morning. Now, there is a story in the Bible, and this is the story about Abraham and Sarah. The Bible presents this patriarch in the land that God has told him to go, and he decides because of famine to go down to Egypt because there is no food, there is no pastures for his animals, and Sarah and Abraham decide to go down to Egypt. And when they're about to get to Egypt, Abraham turns to Sarah and tells her, honey, you know that I love you? And she says, I know. And Abraham says, do me a favor. When we get down there, tell everybody that I'm your brother and not your husband. And Sarah thinks about it and says, why? Abraham says, because you're very beautiful. If you say that I am your husband, they're going to kill me. And Sarah thought that's a good idea. So they get to Egypt. The men of Egypt told Pharaoh, who is the king, that there is a foreigner here and he has a beautiful woman. Go inquire. So Pharaoh says, go inquire if this woman is a wife or a sister. And when they ask, Sarah says, oh, Abraham is my brother. So Pharaoh takes Sarah as a wife. And before he does anything, God plagues Pharaoh and his household with a disease, probably a boil or something like that. Theologians tells us that it's a severe disease, which was very infectious and contagious. And they realized that they made a mistake, and it was because of Sarah. They returned Sarah, and literally, if you read Genesis 12, Pharaoh rebukes Abraham for lying to him. He gives him a lot of cattle, a lot of sheep. They sacrifice, and he sends him away. After a few years, this couple decides that this is a nice trick, It worked when we were in Egypt. So for the second time, they decide now to go to Gerar. It is not in Egypt, but this is in Kadesh. And the same trick, Abraham tells Sarah, when we get there, please tell them I'm your brother. And Sarah does the same. Abimelech, the king of Gerar, takes Sarah, thinking that she is only the sister to Abraham. And this time in the dream, the king is rebuked by God. God tells him, restore the man's wife because he is my prophet. And when I was reading Genesis 20, this time, this story now, the second story is in Genesis 20, I was fascinated. It is God now who gives a command, restore this man's wife. And that is going to be the title of our subject today, of our talk this morning, restore the man's wife. Why? Because he is my prophet. It is God giving a command to the king, return. This is the year whereby we are going to see restoration in our marriages. And it is God himself who is going to command the king or whosoever is trying or working, or the system which is working to take away our spouses. And we're going to see what are the things which represent the king who takes away our spouses, whether we willingly give our spouses to this king or forcibly the king takes away our spouse. The theologians and the historians tell us that in that ancient culture, if the king likes or loves somebody's wife, for him to justify taking that woman, he has to kill that person. We also see the story of David. David committed the same kind of a crime. He killed Uriah in order to take Bathsheba. And that was why Abraham says, I know these guys. They're not God-fearing people, so they're going to kill me. Do you really love me, honey? Yes, I do. So lie for me. And it is a debate right now in the scholarly world of whether, Abraham and Sarah did something which was ethically correct. So situational ethics and Christian ethics debate on this concept altogether. Now, my personal view is this. It's very easy to point fingers on somebody who is going through a difficult path in their faith or in their marriage. It's easy to judge them. It's easy to tell how wrong they are. Until when you are in a situation, we need the grace of God himself to help us navigate when we get through rough waters like the waters that Abraham was in. Now, I want to take this entire concept and ask ourselves, and I've been asking myself a lot, how many times have we traded our spouses for work, for business, or for material things? We spent more time at work or in our businesses compared to the time that our spouses needed to spend with us. How many times have we traded our spouses for fame, or for status quo, or for looking good at the expense of, being true to our spouses? There's another platform where we have traded our spouses. This is the platform of self-preservation. And this is exactly what Abraham was going through. He wanted to preserve himself at the expense of the marriage, at the expense of the relationship with a wife, to the extent that he was willing somebody to take away his wife in order to preserve himself. Now, how many times have we done that? And we come home and we say, baby, I was so busy. I could not do what you wanted me to do. I could not be home. That's why I'm not available. because of work or because of any other thing, and we are systematically destroying and killing our marriages because of whatsoever reason which is out there. Now, when Abimelech the king confronted Abraham, this is what Abraham said: "We had agreed with my wife that whosoever is going to ask us, we will say we are brothers and sisters." And you know what, King Abimelech? By the way, yes, she is my sister. In real sense, they were related. If you read where Abraham comes from and where Sarah comes from, but it was half the truth. It was not 100%, brother and sister. They were like cousins. They were related, but not very close related, but they were related. In general terms, we can say, yes, they were brothers and sisters, but they were married. The first truth is they were husband and wife. Second to that, they were cousins, because in the Old Testament, in that time, the Bible, or would say God, allowed them to marry within close proximity of their bloodline. Now, there are few principles of true love I want us to discuss this morning, if you allow me to go through that journey. I want to look at 3 principles of true love. And the first principle is this: love is a commitment based on a decision which has been made between 2 people. And it is not based on feelings or affection or emotional state. So love basically is a commitment. And this commitment does not depend on anything else. Doesn't depend on how I feel today. It doesn't depend on how you look today, or it doesn't depend on my bank account. Every morning when I wake up, I make that decision: I'm going to love my wife. I'm going to love my husband. Whether I feel it or I don't feel it, it's not based on feelings. It is a firm decision which is made. It's a resolution which we make in our heart. I'm going to love my spouse no matter what. Now, many times, especially in nowadays, people make a commitment of marriage: I will love you as long as I feel like loving you. If I feel like I don't love you anymore, that's the end of the story. And I believe we miss a great principle here, that we can feel affectionate, sometimes we don't feel affectionate. And the true anchor of a true love is a commitment and is not our feelings, because our feelings can deceive us. We are emotional beings. There are times we feel so strong about our spouses, and there are times we don't feel that strong about our spouses. If we base our relationship on our feelings, we will definitely fail. That's why love has to be anchored on a commitment. Like the way we commit ourselves to follow Christ, no matter what. Sometimes it doesn't feel exciting to follow God or to follow the paths of righteousness, but we do it anyhow. Why? Because we made a decision. We made a commitment. Now, love in our relationship is exactly the same. It's based on a commitment. And a commitment is the attitude of the heart. It is a determination which is resolved. It's a resolved heart which makes this determination. It comes deep from inside us, and it is not wavered. It is not tossed to and fro by what we see or what we feel. The second principle of love is that love is not situational. And as you can tell nowadays, the TV and the Hollywood and our neighbors and our friends and our societies tell us that love is situational. It really depends on a situation. If the situation is conducive, we'll continue to love each other. But if the situation, is not conducive, we stop loving each other. So it is really depending on the circumstance. What circumstance are we in? And based on that circumstance, then we either love each other or we don't love each other. Now, we do not love based on the circumstance or the situation. Regardless of the circumstance, whether it's favorable or not favorable, we will love anyhow. Regardless of what is going on, we love and we are committed to our spouses. That is the principle number 2. Despise of her or his weaknesses or flaws or mistakes. The more we stay together, the more we discover each other. There are things you didn't know when you are relating or when you are courting each other, and then you jump into the marriage, you realize deeper things. Now, do I quit because I have known this person? And guess what? Our spouses know us more than we even know ourselves. If you really want to know about me, ask my wife. She knows where I tick. She knows where, I can easily become short-tempered. She knows what are the areas, hot buttons, And there's certain things which I don't even know about myself, but she knows about me. Does that give us a guarantee to sign off or to quit on love because we have known this person better? No. I think that the more we stay together, we grow together and we learn to accept each other because we also have weaknesses. We also have flaws that our spouses have to bear with. So, as much as I know you, I'm also being known by you. And that makes it even. And it is good to have somebody who really knows you. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. If everybody else doesn't understand you, at least you have one person who sits and sleeps beside you who understands you. The whole world might misunderstand you, but there is one person who understands you. He comforts you, or she comforts you, and he or she is with you throughout, no matter what. That is the principle of love. It is not situational. Another principle of love, which we also learn from the book of Corinthians, from epistle of Paul to the Corinthians, the love letter, is that love gives. When God loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son. Now, one major characteristic of love is giving. Many times we get it backwards. If we love, we want to receive. And this is exactly what Abraham did. He told Sarai, "Do you really love me?" "Yes." And then Abraham goes ahead and demands. takes, we become takers. If we love, we don't become takers. If we love, we become givers. Love gives itself sacrificially. And that is a great principle of love. Don't tell me only that you love me. Show me that you love me. And how do I see that you love me? You give yourself, you give your time, you give things that are precious, you give away other things that are precious for me. Then I know that I am loved. And how do you show your spouse that you love her? One, yes, we tell our spouses that we love them, but it doesn't end up being a lip service. We go ahead and give ourselves to that person. We give. Love gives. I remember when we were preparing for the wedding, my wedding. This is about 25 years ago now. We went and bought a wedding gown, and we were together with Dorothy. And a taxi driver saw us with this big wedding gown. And he was a middle-aged person. He was already married. He could tell that we were about to get married. And he asked us, when are you guys getting married? And we were excited. We told him, next Saturday, that's our wedding. And when he was driving us, he started telling us about the Oriental culture. And he asked us this question, which I will never forget. He asked us, do you know why the Orientals are the lowest in divorce rate? And we didn't have a clue. And he said, because they compete each other. The couple competes to see who is going to outgive the other person, who is going to be nicer than the other person by giving themselves to the other person. So today the husband will do this to show the wife that he loves her. And then tomorrow the wife will do something else, and they keep on competing on that. And that is the secret that they continue in marriage, which is exciting for a longer period of time compared to other cultures in the world. And since then, I had never forgotten until today, love gives. If you truly love your spouse, you will give yourself. And for us husbands, that is what the Bible teaches us, that we love our spouses, our wives, the way Christ loved the church, that he gave his very life for the sake of the church. So the extent to which I'm going to love my wife, I learned from the way Christ loves the church, and it is a great mystery. And for the wives, it's exactly the same. We love Christ so much that we sacrificially give ourselves to Christ. So it is a reciprocal relationship, and that is the fourth bonus principle. It is a principle of reciprocity. Whatsoever you do to your spouse, automatically it becomes so contagious, they will also do it to you. They will process it, and they will do it to you. If you put them high in your priority list, guess what he's going to do? He also is going to reciprocate that. That is human nature. That's a golden rule. We do to other people what we want them to do to us. And guess what? Automatically, they do it to us. Jesus said, give to people. And what's going to happen? They also going to give it to you. That is a divine reciprocation. What we do to God, in turn, it comes back to us. What we do to other people, in turn, it comes back to us. Now, I was studying and I was asking myself, what are the major reasons for marriages to be broken? What are these kings, the Pharaoh and the Abimelech, that grab our spouses away from us, so to say? What are the major things statistically? So I started consulting different books and different studies that have been made out there from lawyers who will officiate and file for divorces, and counselors and other specialists in the areas of relationship and marriage. And this is what I found. I found there are 5 major things that take away, break the relationships, break the marriages, and are responsible for bringing hurt, resentment, and bitterness in our marriages. Number 1 is lack of commitment. There are no intentional efforts to build a healthy relationship from the couples. Couples will spend money and resources in everything else except their marriage. They want their marriage to go on autopilot. They will put marriage or their relationship very low in their priority list. To me, I still believe so firmly that in our priority list, God becomes first, then my marriage becomes second, then my family becomes third, then my vocation becomes fourth, then worship and other things follow. If we follow that kind of prioritization, most definitely, many scholars and teachers affirm that it will go well with our marriage. We will be able to navigate when our marriages go through rough times. Lack of commitment is a first and foremost reason, and they say up to 73% of marriages that break is because either a husband or a wife is not committed to the marriage. And that is very pathetic. The second reason is poor communication. There is too much arguing. They argue for petty things, bickering and arguing and disagreements at all levels. If there is one thing that this couple or these couples agree, is to disagree. They literally disagree on everything. Part of poor communication is secrecy. You find that couples do not share what is going on. My wife and I do have this particular, I would say, habit or principle. Every evening, if we did not spend time together, when we come back home, she has to tell me her day and I have to tell her my day. And if there is any story, whether positive or negative, I make it a point. The first person to tell that story is not my friends, is not my sister, is not anybody, but is my spouse. So she is 99.9% up to date with what is going on with me. And if we need to catch up, we're just catching up in the evening. Transparency is a big deal in a lot of communication issues because people are not transparent to each other. And we need to know that we need to be transparent to each other. We need to be open to each other and be vulnerable to each other. We have lost the art and the science of listening. Sometimes we talk too much and we don't listen. Or we are hearing, but we are not listening. We are not putting an effort to understand what does our partner mean when they use certain words or whatever they're trying to communicate to us. So we are close to each other physically, but very distant emotionally. And that is very bad. It is a number 2 reason why a lot of marriages break, because there is poor communication. I will encourage us to spend time to learn about communication. There are a lot of good resources out there which will teach us on how to communicate with each other. Ladies have their way of communicating that we need to decipher. We need to understand what they exactly mean. Sometimes they talk in codes that guys need to uncode. We need to really translate what they say. And also guys are exactly the same. There is a certain language that we use. Ladies don't understand what we mean. Sometimes we say yes, but it doesn't really mean yes. It means no. But the way we say the yes, it is as if we mean yes, but it doesn't really mean yes. So we really need to understand each other and to really understand the situation, and that enables us to communicate better. And the more we communicate better, the more our families, the more our marriage is restored and it becomes strong. Because if there are any issues, they are going to be caught early before they become major issue. When they're still minor issues, they can easily be resolved because we listen to each other. Number 3 is lack of intimacy. There is insatisfaction in the sexual relationship. Sexually, there is insatisfaction. Now, many times lack of intimacy leads to infidelity, either physical infidelity, this is extramarital affairs, or emotional. We get married emotionally to circumstances or to other people. There are those who go out and sexually, commit adultery, or they go into affairs. Sometimes, most of the times, especially Christians, we are emotionally unavailable. We are so close to other people and we deny that emotional relationship to our spouses. We are not available. Where are you? Probably we are in social media, or we are at work, or in our businesses, or whatsoever preoccupies us. And emotionally, we are never there. We literally get married to our projects. And there is no time and space available for our spouses. And our spouses are choked, they are suffocated. And guess what happens? They find what they're missing at home somewhere else. And in every extramarital affair, if you talk to both parties, you will understand that there is no innocent party most of the time. Another party, which sometimes we call them innocent party, they are responsible because they were not emotionally present. So we need to be present, even on our bed. And sometimes I was talking to a young man, and he asked me about the negative effects of pornography. That's another negative effect of pornography, especially for men, even for women, is that you will have a lot of sexual partners in your mind, and you will demand those partners on your marriage bed, and you will never be satisfied with your partner. Because somebody asks, what's wrong with pornography? I am married. I do have my spouse. The major issue with pornography is everything which you see out there becomes a mental image of what sex ought to be. These people are actors, and you will demand a lot from your spouse, and you will always bring these actors on your marriage bed, and you will never be able to get them on your marriage bed. And you will find people who are addicted to pornography. They will demand a lot from their spouses, and they will never be satisfied because they've already raised the bar. Their standard is out there, which is very artificial and virtual. It's basically a deception, and it kills marriages. That's another king which takes away our spouses. Number 4 is finances and money. Statistics show that 30 to 60% of marriages break because of financial issues, either lack of transparency, poor spending habits, or there is lack of common financial goal, and there is disagreement on what do we need to do with this money and how do we manage the finances in a household. Father or the husband has his own money and his own goals and ambitions and projects to do with his money, and the wife has her money and the goals she wants to achieve with her money, and the two don't talk to each other. The left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, and there is a lot of resentment, bitterness, and argument around finances. And especially when there is a common demand, when there is something which is a major issue in the family which demands finances, that is when a breakdown happens. Somebody gets sick, or you want to pay for school fees for the kids, or one person needs now to go to school, or whatsoever big item which needs to be acquired. Now that is when conflicts and tension arises in the relationships. It's because we don't have transparency and a common financial goal. And worse enough, couples avoid discussing about finances. And this makes resentment to grow and bitterness to grow. And number 5, and the last major issue, is there is unrealistic expectations. Spouses have really, I remember myself, before I got into marriage, I had major expectations, and most of those were unrealistic expectations. With time, where I realized that I was expecting too much. Now, what are the examples of unrealistic expectations? Some are a spouse thinks that, the partner is responsible for their happiness. Your partner is not responsible for your happiness. You are responsible for your happiness. Or they think that your spouse is going to make you complete. No. You have to be secure enough to know that your wholesomeness comes from you. whether he or she is there or she is not there, you are already a whole. It is two whole people coming together. Many times we say a better half, as if without him or her, I'm not complete. No, you are complete. It is two complete people coming together. It is 1 plus 1 becomes 1. It is not half plus half becomes 1. In marriage, the equation here is different. It's 1 plus 1 equals 1. It's not half plus half equals 1. No. So remember, your completeness, my completeness, does not come from my spouse. Another expectation is we should spend all my time together. If I have time, you have to be there. No. People need their personal space. They need to breathe. You cannot just be there all the time. And this sometimes is a very unhealthy relationship. It's a question of growth. I've seen couples who every time, everywhere, they are together and they don't even give each other space to think, space to meditate and evaluate their lives. I think that is very unhealthy. We need time with our spouses, which is most of the time, but we also need time for ourselves, just being yourself. And do retrospect study, do introspect assessment, reflect, pray, go into the closet. Okay? There are time for you to be an individual, and then there are time for you to be together. And another expectation, which is a negative expectation, is people sometimes say, I got married out of wrong reasons. So after some time, few years, 15, 20 years, they think, you know what? I got into this relationship out of wrong reasons. So I need to jump out of the boat. Well, I can understand the sentiments, but the thing is this, we forget one very important fact here. God can heal marriages. It doesn't matter what reasons you had when you are going into marriage. God can heal and is in the business of healing marriages. There are people who got married before they even knew God. And once they knew God, they continued with happy marriages. They had all wrong reasons. A human heart is inherently deceptive. And especially if you met together before you were Christians, you don't have a good reason to jump out of the boat because you had a bad reason to get into the marriage, or you feel that you are cheated by your partner. God is in the business of healing marriages. I want to encourage you. Remember, all is now new. Everything is new once we are in Christ Jesus. If God can heal blind eye, if God can heal a lame limb, if God can heal a withered limb, withered arm, how much more if Jesus could raise the dead? Lazarus came from the dead and God raised him up. Will God fail to heal your marriage because you just entered out of a wrong reason? Why do we underestimate our God? Why do we have such a small God and we are putting a lot of limitations on him? What is so big and complicated that our God cannot deal with? I want to encourage you, no matter what reason you have, even if that reason is very reasonable, God is able to solve your problems and give you a wonderful times of refreshment in your marriage. Now, what are practical steps towards restoration of our marriages? In a marriage conference, we have to talk about marriage. There are so many things I perceive in my heart that God is going to do in this year. But let us restrict ourselves and talk about relationship. There are two practical steps we need to do for God to restore our marriages, to experience what He intended originally when He put together this institution of marriage. Number one is we need to work with God, and number two, we need to work with each other. Step number one, we need to work with God. Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 10 says, we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which were prepared for us before the foundations of the world were put together. In other words, Paul is telling Ephesians that we and God are partners. We work together. We are co-workers. Before God created the world, He created good works, good things to be done. And then He created us in order to do those good works. So God prepares the works first, and then He calls us in Christ Jesus Christ to do those works. So us and God are partners. When it comes to marriage, we are partners with God. There are things in our relationship, marital relationship, which are God's responsibility. And there are things that are our responsibility as a couple. Things which are God's responsibility are things like forgiveness. An ordinary human heart cannot forgive. Forgiveness is a major issue. We are by nature revengeful. We want to revenge. We want to fight back. We want to punish. It is only God, through His Holy Spirit, who gives us to forgive one another. The other thing is to accept one another. The more we see, the more we repel. The more I know my partner and their weaknesses and their flaws, I feel like running away. It is God who gives me the power to accept my spouse the way Christ accepts the church and us believers. Some other things which we can not do, only God can do, is to love each other deeply and dearly. Love without God is impossible. A true agape love comes from God. Without God, we cannot love. There are different types of love, but a true sacrificial love which is unconditional, it comes from God, and it is through Him we can love one another. That is the aspect that we need God. Marriage is not only made out of erotic love. Not only that is only part of it, but there are other types of love which the Latin language or the Greek language puts it differently. Now, remember, there are different kinds of loves or love that compose of a marital love. A relationship between a husband and a wife, there has to be a godly love. And that godly love is called agape, and it comes from God. Without it, we will not be able to love one another. Secondly, we need to work with each other. Marriage is an institution that has three parties. There is God, there is husband, and there is wife. And these three make a triangle, and we need to work together. Remember, like any other institution, marriage goes through seasons. I won't spend time on that, but there are 4 seasons of marriage, and every marriage is in one of these seasons. Ask your spouse, pray together, analyze your marriage, and, see where are you? In which season are you at? There is summer. Summer is fun and excitement. Everything is a bed of roses. Then there is fall. Fall in marriages externally, we see things are okay, but deep inside, few things are simmering. There is some rejection, there is some resentment, and there's some few things which an outside world cannot really tell. It's only the two people who can tell. Then there is winter. Winter time is characterized by coldness, harshness. This is ugly time. This is where there is a lot of bitterness. There is abuse. There is verbal abuse, sometimes physical abuse. There is breakdown of communication, and now we can tell these guys are not getting along. They cannot hide it anymore, and sometimes there is separation. This is a winter time, and if they manage to resolve this time, they can go into springtime. Spring is new beginnings. We're seeing new things. They start reaping the benefit of resolving their differences, of humbly listening to each other and compromise here and there and sacrificing themselves for one another. And they're starting to build again. This is spring. So remember, marriage has 4 seasons, and every marriage goes through these seasons, and they're cyclic. You might be in summer today, enjoy yourself. You might be in fall, start working out those differences. You might be in winter, you're already signing those divorce papers. It is solvable. It is solvable. I want to give you some personal tips and conclude. This is from my personal experience and from the experience of others. Number 1, all marital issues, all marriage problems or marital issues are solvable. If we want to resolve them, we can resolve them. If we are determined that we want to make this work, it's workable, because all marriage problems are either ignorance or the problem of a heart. Either ignorance or the problem of the heart. Ignorance, if we shed some light of how things needs to be done, we can easily correct ourselves and recorrect our path, and our marriages are restored. Tip number 2, we invest time, money, and resources, like I've said, in every other thing. We need now to start investing time on our marriages. If you don't invest time, resources, and your money into your marriage, do not expect to reap anything where you have never planted, you have never invested. This is a principle of life. You only benefit where you have invested. If you don't invest in your marriage, don't expect to reap anything out of that marriage. It's like a farmer who buys a farm, doesn't plant anything, and after 5 years, he comes and expects a harvest. What is he going to reap? Weed. He's going to reap a lot of weeds. And you don't want that. Thorns and thistles. Those are the things which are going to grow if you let your marriage go on autopilot. Tip number 3, uncertified third parties, they always ruin rather than build your relationship. It's better to consult certified professionals who know what they're doing, who have a track record whenever you're having issues, whenever you are in winter or wherever you are in fall, in order to resolve your issues. Uncertified consultants or uncertified third parties can be friends, family, and fools. These are people who come and they are passionate to kill your marriage. You will confide with them and you will tell them every issue you're going through, and they will give you bad advice. They will sympathize with you and they will give you a terrible advice, and they will follow up on that advice, and when you fail, they will laugh at you. Or they are already failures and they want to build up their team. They want to have a big team of failures. You don't want to join them. A few weeks back, I had issues with my water heater, with my water boiler. So a technician came and he looked at the water boiler and he said, "Lucas, what happened here?" And I said, "What?" And he says, "Your water boiler. What's going on?" And he jumped into that water boiler and cut off the gas. And I say, "Why do you do that?" He says, "No. And I said, "What's going on?" He said, "No, Lucas, who repaired this for you? Who installed this for you?" And I was like, because I knew. I went on Craigslist and I got this guy who was not certified, who knew nothing. I bought a new heater and he installed this boiler without putting a vent. And I asked him, "This thing has a vent there on top. Are we not supposed to put a vent?" And he said, "No, these are new models. You don't need to put a vent on it." He didn't know. He didn't know. And this certified technician comes and he says, "They are toxic fumes which are released by this water boiler. There are fumes like carbon monoxide and other gases, and you don't have a vent, and all these fumes fill in your basement and they go into your office." My office is in the basement, and few steps from here, my boiler is right there. I can see it from here. Now you can imagine, these are uncertified third parties who came and fixed my boiler. And they were ready. They didn't know that they were killing me. Now these toxic fumes were all coming in here, and thank God I didn't die, So right now, I'm having a certified technician to come and fix my boiler. Your marriage is exactly the same. Do not consult the uncertified third parties, technicians. They will kill your marriage. Get people who are certified, people who have vested positive interest to see you successful. I believe that you're challenged. There are things that you're going to change. And I have one thing to conclude this talk. May the Lord Himself command these kings to restore your spouse. Why? Because you are the child of the living God. May God bless you, and I believe this year is going to be a year that your relationship, your marriage is going to be restored. You're going to enjoy your marriage than you have ever enjoyed before. God created marriage as an institution for you to enjoy. Marriage is not a place for you to be punished. Marriage is not a place for you to learn tough lessons. Marriage is for you to enjoy. The devil distorted it, but God is going to restore it. Restore the man's wife because he is the prophet, or restore the man's husband. Why? Because she is my prophetess. God bless you, and see you at the top.